Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for Monday, the 7th day of May, 2018. Let's begin by looking at the Southern Oscillation Index, the SOI, dropping here over the last several days to a couple of weeks. The most noticeable, of course, is in the 30-day values, and that makes sense because it's a 30-day, a much shorter time frame, the sample period, than the 90-day. The 90-day has been a more steady decline, and generally speaking, I mean, there's zero right there. The 30-day is a little bit below zero. And remember, this is just an index. Okay, it's just keeping score of how the Southern Oscillation Index itself is behaving. And when it's strongly negative and consistently so, we tend to see an El Nino form. And when it's strongly positive and consistently so, we are typically in a La Nina state, and in between we typically get this neutral period. And for the most part, especially looking at the 90-day, there's zero again right there. And remember, it's just an index. It's kind of like how many points does a basketball team score in a game. They're just points. They don't represent anything except points. And so this is a similar thing. You know, this is the baseline of zero, and the 90-day is above zero right now. And so that tells me, as we move over here to the sea surface temperature anomalies map, that the Pacific still not quite ready to launch an El Nino just yet. All right? If we say a strongly negative and more importantly, consistently negative SOI, then we start shifting the base state so that we get these westerly wind bursts coming across the Pacific. The trade winds relax, they even reverse, and all of this water over here gets to warm up abnormally so, and you get this El Nino condition, or phenomenon as people call it, and we're not there just yet. In the Atlantic Basin, still fairly cold relative to average. In parts of the deep tropics, though some of this has recovered a little bit through here in the main development region as the trade winds have relaxed just a little bit. That's going to wax and wane over time, and I'm going to tell you, once we get to August, September, the water temperatures in the Atlantic Basin are going to be warm enough to support hurricane activity. And I just want to point something out. When Irma passed through this part of the Caribbean here last September, water temperatures were not exceptionally warmer than average. Okay, they weren't like some crazy high, and I'll go back and look. Maybe we'll do that next week just to prove it to you. But I remember looking at it and thinking they're a little bit warmer, but it's not just the water temperature and how much above or below normal the upper ocean heat content is. That's an important factor, but the upper levels were so ideal in this area of the Atlantic Basin that Irma and Jose and Maria all took advantage of that in a big, big way. And 2 out of those 3, and even Jose arguably, became Category 5s, okay? And it wasn't because sea surface temperatures were some record-setting warmth above normal. In fact, Irma, Jose, Maria, all being in generally the same area, churned up that water, and we still had Category 5 Hurricane Maria. So a lot of it has to do with the atmosphere as well, and there's no way we can really get a gauge of that until it's upon us, okay? So we can look at that down the road a spell. But for now, no major surprises, no major changes in the Atlantic, at least recently. But boy, if we check back to last year, I like to do this from time to time, quite a big difference between this time last year and here we are today. A much warmer deep tropics here in the Atlantic Basin, and then we were starting just the very beginnings of the cracks, if you will, in the sidewalk, or whatever, the pavement, the armor of the Pacific. Remember, everybody, well, most everybody, based on the Euro, was saying, El Nino last year, it's coming. Nope, we went to La Nina. And I'm seeing the same thing again for this year from people that are just posting the European seasonal forecast, calling for a moderate to strong El Nino possibly. And it's just like, really? Did we not learn anything from last year? I'm not even going to show it because I don't believe it. A weak El Nino by November, maybe. All right, but right now we're nowhere near that. Look, And in fact, last year, the Pacific was warmer. Anyhow, let's move on, shall we? In the Pacific, the Eastern Pacific hurricane season on a man-made calendar begins on May 15th. That's next week. Nature doesn't always follow our calendars, and lo and behold, we have this system out here with a 40% chance of development over the next 5 days. Way, way far away, there's Cabo San Lucas. You have the Pacific coast of Mexico with your resort towns and awesome locations here. Okay, so this is far away. That's the point. Way far away. It's moving this way, and so you don't really have to worry about it. But it's there, and it's showing us that the hurricane season in the Eastern Pacific about to begin, and maybe something will try to get going ahead of the season, kind of like we did last year. Remember, Adrian formed outside of the May 15th magic calendar date? Yeah, it did. It was, I think, the earliest on record, if memory serves. So we have this big blob of convection down here, showers and thunderstorms, trying to organize, and some of the modeling saying yes, some of the modeling saying no. Water temperatures through here are marginal, conditions are marginal. It's kind of early. It's, it's not quite May 15th yet, so you're not going to get prolific development. And this, too, gives you an idea that this is far away from any of the land masses over here, and it's moving off to the west-northwest to northwest with time. I'll show you the GFS forecast for it in just a minute, just to put your mind at ease. Nothing to worry about along the Pacific coast for our friends south of the border. All right, here is a visible animation of it, satellite animation. It's there, it's trying to organize, but it certainly isn't going, as they say, gangbusters. And a few other cool things. Look at all that stable air. It's just so neat to see. Colder sea surface temperatures up here for sure, and you get that stable air mass on top of that. Warmer sea surface temperatures down here, and you have more instability and convection and other features in the atmosphere. It's just fascinating, at least I think so. And maybe you do too, because that's why you're here. And speaking of that, and excuse me while I battle the pollen monsters that try to develop in my throat. That's one of the bad things about living. Maybe I could move operations to Phoenix until summer and then move back to North Carolina when the pollen calms down in the middle part of the summer. Food for thought. I hate it. The pollen is just annoying. Anyhow, it is National Hurricane Preparedness Week, and, what does that mean for, everybody's different. And I'm just pointing this out. This is the time to think about it. You see that picture of a gentleman there getting gas cans and so forth ready. I'm going to just say this. If you are ready for a hurricane, and I mean full-on ready, you can handle pretty much anything that happens. If we have some freak power outage, some kind of a weird natural disaster that, just whatever, okay? I don't want to say something like on the level of Armageddon, but, a civil disturbance, a terrorist attack, or something really unpleasant. Hurricanes are unpleasant enough, but if you are prepared for those, you can handle just about anything. And the bottom line is that you would be self-sufficient. 5 to 7 days, in my opinion, is a good time frame to have enough food, water, other staples, gasoline, fuel supplies, etc. 5 to 7 days, and then hopefully whatever happened, be it a natural disaster or a man-made catastrophe, then the government can come in and get the infrastructure back to where it belongs, because I think that's their responsibility, not coming in and babysitting us. That's not what it's for. We got to help each other. We have to be smart enough to help ourselves too first, and then the government can handle rebuilding the infrastructure, the background of everything, and then the wheel gets turning again. So that's my opinion on the whole thing. Check out the Hurricane Preparedness Week page at I just typed hurricanes.gov/prepare, and there you go. It's just got some nice tips on how to get ready, and I suggest that you do that because I want you around to watch these videos in the future. Things get a lot more interesting once we get into hurricane season. Trust me. This is an interesting graphic. Speaking of preparedness, preparedness will help keep you ready for the event itself, but when the hurricanes come, how are people losing their lives overall in the grand scheme of things? Okay, and this is through 2011, which is interesting, but I guess that's the data. And the Deputy Director, Ed Rappaport, I guess produced this in 2013. I think there's a new version of this, but overall the statistics have not changed much. And what do they show? Water, let's change this to red. Water, whether it be surge or fresh water, so salt water, well, I guess you can have freshwater surge too. 75% of the deaths is from water. How many times when you're hearing about a hurricane is the headline about water? Well, it took a while for Harvey to get there because it created an epic flood. It took a little bit of time because Irma was threatening a catastrophic storm surge. But what were the first things we heard? Category 4 Harvey, Category 5 Irma. None of that had anything to do with the water. Zip. That is a wind scale based on damage potential to our property from the Saffir-Simpson scale. That's wind. So where does wind factor into this? 5%. In other words, you are way more likely to die from a water hazard from a hurricane, and that includes surf. Now we're up to 80%, and then offshore, 85%. All right, so 85% of the fatalities are because of something related to H2O. Not wind, not tornadoes. Those are insignificant overall, than the water part. So we have to rethink this whole hurricane thing, that they bring surge to the coast, dump a lot of rainfall. We saw that with Harvey. That can extend inland. You think about Camille, 1969 in the Appalachians, Floyd in eastern North Carolina, Allison in Houston in 2001. Just tropical depressions or even tropical low-pressure areas can bring a lot of heavy rain. So as we get to this hurricane season coming up, I am going to focus on all of this to make sure we understand what we're dealing with here. These headlines, the clickbait headlines of a Category 5 is headed for wherever, that does you no good. And what does that tell you how to get ready and what to expect? And we got to do something about that, and I'm going to help out with that the best I can. Alrighty? So moving on to more pleasant news, because that last graphic, you don't want to have to think about ways of getting killed by hurricanes, but it's out there, and we have to deal with it. What we don't have to deal with, at least for the next couple of days, I like this, the overall pattern in the lower 48. Nice and calm, just a few like fire weather danger kind of deals here. Other than that, no severe weather to speak of, nothing widespread. This is kind of like September 10th, the peak of the season, and there's nothing going on in the Atlantic. And that's happened before, believe me. And people cheer, yay, that's great. And it's the same thing here. You see day one, no big deal, just a few areas of random convection here and there, no organized severe weather outbreaks. Same thing for day two, and the same thing applies through days 3, 4, etc. Or I guess this is day 3. And then the day 4 through 8 outlook is so low that there's nothing. How about that? That's truly like having a dead peak of the hurricane season. Pretty amazing for going on to mid-May. Anybody with chasing plans on the Great Plains, you're going to have a lot of time to enjoy the great outdoors and blue skies. Let's just say that. All right, so looking at the GFS here from Levi Cowan's website, Tropical Tidbits, the Eastern Pacific, just to get your bearings, here's the Baja, California, Mexico. All right, you see where everything is, San Diego, Los Angeles up here. Okay, so let's put this somewhat into motion, go through the graphics. This is the area that we're watching right there. And you see it tries to spin up, maybe a little bit over the next, almost 72 hours. There we go. And then off it goes into colder water, a more stable air mass, and it'll dissipate whatever happens with it. But the main thing here, it's not coming towards Mexico, nothing like that. So don't worry, not a problem for land whatsoever. All right? All right. So that is it from me for today. I appreciate you tuning in. Next week, the Eastern Pacific season begins officially on Monday, and I'll start doing these updates probably, a couple times a week, especially if there's something to talk about in the East Pac. And yes, this will focus on Eastern Pacific hurricanes and typhoons or whatever out in the West Pac as necessary. And then before you know it, it'll be June 1st, and these will be pretty much daily. All righty? Have a good rest of your week. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for watching. We'll reconvene next Monday.